Paula.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, everyone.
Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now recording. Welcome to everybody to the today is Tuesday, May 12th. I had to actually look at that written down because who remembers what days are or what day it is anymore? 2020. This is the meeting of the Community Board 12 Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee. We do not yet have quorum. We've got 4 members with welcome Sally Fisher. We need, I believe, 5 for quorum, but I expect more people to be joining us. Once again, I will be monitoring the chat. We have fantastic with the arrival of Alexis Marnell, one of our public members. We now have a quorum. I will be monitoring the chat from among the attendees so that I can answer any questions or allow people to talk if they have specific questions. And with that, I'm going to bring us to order at 6:34. So welcome everybody. I have a couple of updates. One is on the Lenape Street co-naming. I was speaking via email earlier this week with Luis Ramos. He is in touch with some of the Ramapo. They're very excited about the possibility of a street co-naming. I'm still trying to figure out from the city council the extent to if they're still doing street co-namings, how they're going to be doing street co-namings, if the process is a little bit different, since obviously petitioning is a little bit of a challenge. Ain't nobody doing that. There are no big crowds to carry a clipboard of petitions around in. So usually there are at the stated meeting of the city council in June and in December is when the city council does street co-namings. Since this is not and generally we would have a board resolution. So usually we would have looked to have a resolution at the May meeting so that it could go to the city council for June. That's clearly not going to happen. Fortunately, since it's not really under any particular time pressure, we are going to defer this until we have a little more clarity from the city council about any changes on the procedure, and we'll look to doing this in time for a co-naming in December when we are able to be in crowds and gatherings. But I didn't want for that to just fall by the wayside and for anybody to think that we had forgotten about that. Second update in terms of COVID-19 and parks usage and restrictions. As we had discussed at the last meeting, there was a call out for opening up the road in Fort Tryon Park, Margaret Corbin Drive. That is one of the roads that is in the first round of road openings in order to provide additional public space so that people can use our parks while still maintaining physical distance. I'm trying not to use the phrase social distancing because I think we're all isolated enough and we need to figure out how to come together socially while staying physically apart. So if I use the term social distancing, raise your hand and shake your finger at me, because it's up to us to use, I think, more emotionally helpful and language that better reflects the appropriate social bonding and sense of community that we should all be feeling. So Margaret Corbin Drive got closed. Laurel Hill Terrace, which is a small U-shaped street that starts just north of 181st Street at Amsterdam Avenue and goes along Highbridge Park and then curves back around at 186th, 187th Street. That has been closed. And then the one block of Dykeman Street between Broadway and Seaman Avenue just at the northern perimeter of the Riverside Inwood Neighborhood Garden, the Ring. That has also been closed. There are other street closures as well in the borough and throughout the city, but those are the three in our district. And there may be others that the city council and the mayor will contemplate, but that's what we have for right now. Parks continue to be open. There are, sometimes people are really good about staying physically apart, about wearing masks. And if we all continue to do that, then the parks will continue to stay open. The police department and the parks department have had several mask distribution events in and around parks at Highbridge and Inwood and Fort Tryon, at the J. Hood Wright Rec Center, and other areas. I think that's all I have on parks. And later on in the meeting, when we do our roundtable of brief programming updates from Friends of Parks organizations and from cultural organizations, we can get into a little bit of a meatier discussion about the role that we all have in helping each other through this incredibly strange time, and what is the role of public space and of arts and culture in individuals and institutions. So with that, I think we can go to the second agenda item, which is the presentation on the proposed, oh wait, you know what? I forgot. I just want to very quickly share my screen, which is a little bit disruptive because it interrupts the view of the people. But can everybody see that agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so just very quickly, roadmap of the evening. We're going to have a presentation on the proposed Inwood Hill baseball field renovation project with a presentation from Parks Capital Division. That item, I believe, needs a resolution. Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay, so we will discuss and pass a resolution on that item, either in support of or in opposition to that proposal. Then we'll have a brief presentation from Jennifer on updates on any capital projects. And I think there are a couple public questions on some issues there. And then we'll do our roundtable of programming updates. I don't think we have any old business. There isn't any new business that I know of that's been brought to my attention. And it's my hope that we can be done with this meeting by 8:30, because I think more than 2 hours on a Zoom is just mentally exhausting. So everybody good with that?
Yep.
Fantastic. I'm gonna stop the screen share, and yay, my whole little gallery is back. So with that, I do just want to say that the Inwood Hill ball field renovation project initially was the renovation of Inwood Ball Field 1. And we had a public scoping meeting, and we had a presentation about that. And one of the things, there was a lot of feedback from the community about the terrible drainage situation in the outfield, and that we needed to have more work done, not just on Ball Field 1, but on the other ball fields. There was a call for lights. Our council member, Idanis Rodriguez, fantastically directed additional city funds to this renovation project. And rather than going ahead with the Ball Field 1 renovation, that project was put on hold and expanded to include multiple ball fields. There was another scoping meeting, and the recommendations at that scoping meeting, which was back in January, sort of stood on the shoulders of the recommendations from the previous meeting. And now the fantastic folks at the Parks Department have come together with a plan for the Inwood ball fields. So with that, I introduced Rebecca Canfer and George Bloomer from the Parks Department Capital Division. And they have, I believe, a PowerPoint presentation to share. Now, are you sharing that or do I need to share that?
I'm happy to share it, and then I can kind of scroll as needed. I hope this is fairly straightforward. This is my first time sharing my screen on Zoom, so please excuse me if this takes a minute.
And just for, since some people might be new to this project, one other thing to point out, if it wasn't made clear, is there were 2 public scoping meetings for this. One for the first, when we were just going to do the ball field 1, and then the subsequent.
Right. So the first one, the second one was in January of 2020, and the first one was in like December of 2018, I think.
That sounds about right.
That sounds right. Yeah. Good work. Good memory.
That's why they pay me the big bucks. Oh wait, I'm a volunteer. Okay. Hit it.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right, is that showing?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. All right, and so thank you, Liz, for doing that great introduction so that I don't have to. My name is Rebecca Canfer. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Let's see if I can do a full screen.
No, I think that's pretty good.
Okay, is that okay? I don't actually know how to do full screen.
I don't think, I mean,
So,
it's showing up on about 2/3 of the screen, and I'm still able to see the chat, and I'm still able to see a little bit of the people. So I think this is
okay,
good. Showing
that might work better.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see, so to get things started, as Liz mentioned, this is the project that includes ball fields 1, 2, and 4 for Inwood Hill Park, and additionally sports lighting. And so after the community input meeting, we had the second one this past January, where we heard about additional thoughts you had about the ball fields and the sports lighting. We took the feedback and the additional input we received from last year, and we updated our goals to reflect this input. And so the goals include reconstructing the 3 ball fields to address ADA accessibility on all 3 ball fields, including accessible spectator seating and dugouts, to replace chain link fence in poor condition and raise the height of the perimeter fencing to 16 feet to help to prevent balls from flying over in certain areas to other parts of the park, to address drainage and erosion problems, including uneven outfield, and to provide new and improve existing amenities for the players and spectators. Some of the things that had been mentioned include drinking fountains, bottle fillers, big belly trash receptacles, ADA seating, and the pitching batting cage for ball field 1. So these are all components that for the most part are used for all 3 fields. And we're gonna have some design details that show, I'll go into more detail about what's included for each ball field in future slides. So here's the project location in northern Manhattan, within Inwood Hill Park. Fortunately, we're out of the floodplain. Let's see. And the site is adjacent to primarily mixed residential land use. And the neighborhood context, Inwood Hill Park is a large park with many diverse amenities available. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this project, or as Liz mentioned, we've expanded the scope where initially we were doing just ball field 1. We're now including ball fields 2 and 4, as you can see in the existing conditions plan, and ball fields 3 and 5 are remaining in use during construction, so you can still hold games. The existing fence diagram shows the perimeter fencing that we're going to be including in the project. This is surrounding adjacent to ball fields 1, 2, and 4. And as you can see, this dotted gray line shows the existing 8-foot fence, and then this section along the right with netting on top by Indian Road Playground to extend the height and prevent the balls flying over.
And that's going to extend to what height?
And so it's going to be extending to 16 feet now.
Rebecca, will you point out for people who don't know where the dog run is?
Oh, yeah, sure. This is the dog run right here.
And that was another issue. People wanted protection from
Okay.
balls.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's see. And
So I'm sorry, so it's going to be 8 feet of netting along the.
Oh, sorry. So this is showing what is it?
For a total of 16 feet, or it's 16 feet of netting for a total of 24 feet?
Yep. So right now this is showing what's existing. And so I have some photographs that might make it easier to understand. But so the perimeter fence is all 8 feet. And then just in this one section by Indian Road Playground, I'm assuming community members asked to have a netting extension on top of the 8 feet. I think it's like 5 to 8 feet of additional height there. But so then we'll have another diagram that shows the proposed fencing later on.
Okay.
Where we're just going to do 16 feet of fencing around the entire perimeter to be consistent. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So here's the site analysis. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, we have ball field 1 with the concrete bleachers in a deteriorated condition. All 3 of the infield and outfield areas for the ball fields are in need of repair and grading with uneven ground, erosion, and drainage issues. And additionally, the dugouts need to be upgraded with fencing and accessibility and all of those things. Okay, the existing tree canopy includes many nice mature trees. As was mentioned, I believe in the previous or the recent community input meeting, ball fields 2 and 4 could use additional tree canopy to provide shade. Okay, and the next few slides are showing some existing site conditions. There are some photos just to give everyone a sense since we're not all there every day. So here we have deteriorated infield and dugouts for ball field 1.
Mm-hmm.
This is showing some accessibility issues and needs for ball field 1, the fountains, including ball field 2, and accessibility. This condition is from ball field 4, I believe.
The far right, yes.
Yep, the far right. That's the only way to get in. Then we have the existing perimeter fence, which has some poor chain link fence conditions. And then this is that photo showing next to Indian Road Playground with the netting on top of the fencing that we're going to be extending. There's also erosion and sedimentation drainage issues on the ball fields. This is ball field 2. And then photos showing clogged drains throughout. This is ball field 2. And then after rain events, there was a lot of pooling of water in different areas of the ball fields. Okay, and so this was us in January, and this is all of the feedback that we received from you during that meeting, and this includes things we heard from the first meeting last year. And so we took this feedback in addition to what we learned during our site visits and existing conditions. And so we've generated a design which we're really excited to share. Here, yay, we have the schematic design. And so this is showing overall all 3 ball fields, what's included. And then in the next few slides, I'll also be showing some blow up details. So I'm gonna give just a general kind of idea of what we're doing with the 3 ball fields here. And then I'm gonna go into more detail for each one. So to start with, for each of the 3 ball fields, we're going to reconstruct and regrade the infields and the outfield, which is connected. And so we have ball field 1 is the baseball field. So it has a 90-foot baseline and it has a larger outfield area that's kind of designated. And then ball fields 2 and 4, you can see they look different. They have just a clay infield and they're a little bit smaller. So they're designated as a softball field. And that just means that it's a 60-foot baseline. It's a little bit smaller. And the outfield area is technically also a little bit smaller than a baseball field.
So you could use all 3 fields at the same time, and barring something unusual, you're going to have probably not a lot of conflict in the respective outfields.
That's right. That's right. And so I think they were designed in a way that they're sharing an outfield to save space, but in theory, there shouldn't be a lot of conflict. And so this is kind of how it is currently. And so we're keeping it that way. We're just kind of fixing to improve drainage and kind of general conditions. Yeah. Let's see. And so additionally, for all 3 fields, we're going to be reconstructing the dugouts to make them ADA accessible. And we're going to be including trash receptacles, new sports benches, and bottle fillers at each dugout. See, there's going to be the new 16-foot perimeter chain link fence. Ball field 1 is still getting the pitching batting cage here. And we're looking at additional sports lighting for ball field 1. And you can see these kind of larger kind of yellow-orange dots along the fence line here are showing kind of approximate locations for those. And then all 3 fields, we're looking at accessible seating, accessibility to the dugouts, and we were looking at providing some additional spectator seating for ball fields 2 and 4, which was a request during the community input meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on. This shows some preliminary grading and drainage for the ball fields to kind of even things out and reduce the ponding and all of those problems. Okay, so this is a blow up of ball field 1. And as mentioned earlier, we're keeping the same design as everyone approved and saw last year. The differences, we're doing the additional sports lighting, which you can again see these kind of yellow-orange dots. We've revised the ADA seating. Previously, we were looking into doing cutouts in the bleachers, and in talking with our engineers and people in the parks department, there's a lot of concern with kind of cost and the ability to cut into the bleachers and potentially it causing a problem and not seeming very feasible. And so you can see here behind the backstop, we're proposing bench seating with accessible companion seating with a pipe rail along the base of the lowest bleacher section as our accessible seating instead, as a really nice option. That's one of the best places to sit. And Chris Noel, our accessibility person here at Parks, recommended this as a really good option alternative. Let's see. And then additionally, I think this was included the last time, but we're going to be patching and repainting the bleachers so they look as nice as everything that's going to be around them. Okay. And so this is a rendering showing the ball field 1. You can see the bleachers on the right here, and just in front, the accessible seating area, the dugouts, and I guess straight into the distance here is where the ramp would come down.
Okay.
Provide access. Okay. Here's the blow up detail for ball field 2. And so here, there was no accessibility to the dugouts, so we have an accessible path going to both of the dugouts. And let's see, at the entrance, we have the high-low drinking fountain, the Big Belly trash receptacle. We've included additional shade trees, 3 of them adjacent to the entrance and the dugouts to provide more shade. And along the path here, there's just a low curb with a pipe rail, which is between the main path and the dugout path to address some grade change for a nice, even, flat walking area here. And then, as you can see along the main path here by the, I believe that's the first baseline, we have additional bench seating with some accessible seating bays adjacent to provide more spectator seating. Okay. And here's the rendering showing ball field 1 from, this is that main walking path, looking to each of the dugouts.
Nice.
And so here's the design for ball field 4. And again, we're providing accessible routes to both of the dugouts. There's the high-low drinking fountain at the entrance, Big Belly trash receptacle here, and then there's additional bottle fillers and trash receptacles in each of the dugouts. We have this nice additional seating area along this side of the ball field with picnic tables, additional benches. There's also various accessible seating options there. And also new shade trees, which I think ball field 4 was especially a concern in terms of having shade for those that are watching the games. And so I think we have 5 shade trees here to kind of help out with that, and some additional nice planting behind the backstop here for the path that goes to the other dugout. Moving on. Oh, so here's the rendering showing that seating area for ball field 4. Okay. And here we have the site furnishings for the ball fields. You can see the first 2 are focused on ball field 1. You have an example of a batting pitching cage, sports lighting. These are the trash receptacles that would be at each of the dugouts, the Big Belly trash receptacles. We have the different types of drinking fountains. The World's Fair benches would be the additional spectator seating, and then the sports bench would be for the dugouts. Here is that proposed fence diagram. And so I guess the important part here is showing that orange dotted line, which is the 16-foot fence going all around the perimeter. So this is the section that we're going to be replacing in this portion of the project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is our current planting palette. And so most of this you saw in the last presentation. We're including, we added some nice shade trees, which I mentioned in the designs. Still have some nice flowering trees here and some lower shrubs with seasonal interest. As we were looking into it, we realized that in Woodhill Park, the forest is designated Forever Wild. And so we thought it would be really nice and we tried to include all native plants to kind of speak to that. And we're working with NRG, the National Resources Group, who help to protect and preserve any of the designated forest areas in the New York City area. And so we've been talking with them about kind of good options to include that'll be really successful around the fields. That'll be nice.
Fantastic.
Let's see. And so this is showing a sustainability analysis. And so I guess the takeaways here are we have mostly open grass on the site. We're including some additional, you can see in the green, these are planting areas that we're adding in. And then these are also the canopy trees. And so we're increasing planting bed areas, and we're using additional shade trees to help cover any paving areas to increase, I guess, the sustainability of the site and reduce any stormwater and erosion problems that we potentially have had in the past. Okay, and so we're back to the schematic design, and I guess we can open it up for questions, comments. I'm happy to move to another page of the presentation if there's a specific question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just have a couple of quick questions to clarify. Can you just remind me, what's the total cost of the project and what's the approximate timeline?
Yep, that's right. And so the total cost for the project is 7.275 million. And I
The
believe,
source of funding on that is, it's all city council or?
here, let me just go
Yeah.
back to the
It's all
That's
city
fine.
council.
Okay.
Okay, and the timeline approximately?
Well, so we were planning on the design portion to be done and contract drawings, I believe, to be done by, I think it was January 2021. The bidding process is, George, it's about 12 to 18 months,
9 to 12 months.
9 to 12 months.
Mhm.
Okay. And so then from there, that would be construction starting, I guess it would be either fall of 2021 or around spring of 2022. Does that sound right? 22.
Yeah, it'd be fall to somewhere,
Yeah.
September
Yeah.
to January.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1 year would bring it to January 2020. And then at least 1 year construction, which would bring us to January 2021. And typically we don't start jobs in January and February, probably, depending on
Yeah.
the season, weather. And usually then it's the beginning of March that we'd like to start up the projects.
So
Yeah.
that would be probably the beginning of March of 2022.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
That's
Okay,
right.
and what's the approximate time frame for construction? 18 months or less?
I think it'll be 18 months. We don't know 100% sure until we get into some of the logistics of it, but it won't be any longer than 18 months.
Okay. And my last question is the trees you mentioned that are being planted. Obviously, trees grow, so some years after they've been planted, they'll be providing even more shade. But are they going to be mature trees that will provide some shade from the beginning?
I can answer that. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by mature, but we put them in about 3 to 3.5 inch caliper. That's usually about the largest we put in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sounds like Steve is, are you just coming in, Steve, or did you have something to add?
No, I've been on the call. But I would hope that the construction would not take more than a year. I would I would try to limit it and hope it wouldn't extend to 18 months.
That's the goal, but we have to look at the logistics really closely.
Yeah,
Well-
I would say that, I mean, assuming it starts in March, it would be fantastic if you're able to do it in a year so that, you know, we can begin the 2023 season with a fully functioning brand new ball fields. That would be amazing. Obviously, if you run into a lot of issues below with the grading, that may add to it, and that may be beyond your control.
Well, the only real complication I see is with the addition of the sports lighting, and whether or not that's going to create some complications. But I would hope the rest of it could go smoothly.
Okay. So committee members, questions? Daryl?
Yeah, I had a question. I know when we first talked about this, there was discussion about possible recycling. I understand that's, you know, very difficult to do in general areas of parks. But because this is specifically an athletic field and a lot of sports drinks will be had, you know, the thought was maybe we could try it out here because people might actually adhere to it. So I wonder if there was any thought to that.
So Daryl, right now sanitation is not committed to picking up parks recycling at outdoor spaces. They do it at park buildings. So the goal obviously is to have that extend beyond park recreation centers and historic houses. But that, I guess, will depend on their resources. When there has been recycling here in the past, I think we had a conversation about how it was often contaminated with regular trash as well. So then when we partnered with NYC Service and with all of the user groups and got everybody to sign a pledge, it still didn't seem as if that would provide enough guarantee that the recycling would actually be just recyclables. So we were unable to sort of unlock it, but at a higher level, Parks Department is working with sanitation to ramp up recycling efforts at Parkland.
So we certainly
And
can
this-
have a resolution that says that we support recycling as a board, and that we would encourage, you know, we've got some time before the design actually goes live, that we would encourage sanitation and parks and the community to work together to, you know, come up with something that works. Because it would be nice, to your point of all those beverage bottles, it's going to be a lot of plastic bottles. It would be great if we could recycle them.
Or
Yeah.
get everybody to use a reusable bottle,
Also,
not generate the waste to begin with, or minimize the recyclable waste to begin with.
And if only we had the health committee chair on the call to talk about this, but
funny.
Can I ask a
that's
question
for
about
another
recycling?
meeting.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to bring in a couple of the other committee members. We've got Francisco Lopez with his hand raised, and
Okay,
then I'm going
Sally.
to call on Sally and then Danielle.
What's a nice school class?
I think I was last raising my hand.
Oh, I showed you as first.
I think I was the third one.
Okay, well then I'm going to put you back on mute, and I'm going to bring in Sally.
Yeah, I have a few questions. One on the recycling. So we're not even going to attempt to have recycling containers so we can see if it works. I mean,
We've
really,
done that.
I know, but I think, you know, we had also talked in the meeting, I think, about having something in the dugout where they can recycle the sports drinks, because if we have the containers, even though y'all aren't recycling them, there are people in the neighborhood who live on those bottles. You know, I
Right.
see them, you know, all the time. So if we can at least have the infrastructure there, I think people are educable. And I think it's irresponsible to be putting no recycling containers in Manhattan's last floors. I just.
We do have what you may remember is we have the trash compactors going in the dugouts, the big bellies, the solar operated ones. I believe that's still part of the plan. And in terms of recyclables, you may see people do cut the bags open and dump the trash out to find the recyclables from the regular trash, which is not ideal. So we'll certainly look for ways to facilitate more isolation of recyclables.
Okay, so I'm hearing that should be something that our resolution should address. So I would like to, I think we've mined this pretty deep, and I'd like to move on to
Okay,
other issues. So what are your other questions?
Okay, the lighting, I didn't see exactly where the lighting was, but I have a couple questions. Of the 7.275 million, how much of that is the lighting? Second, have there been any studies? I mean, those are huge lights. And has anyone canvassed the neighborhood? Because I will be able to see the lights from where I live. You know, there is residential right across from the park. So I'm just a little concerned about the lighting.
Sure. And Rebecca and George, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are lights just, you know how Ball Field 1 is a bit depressed physically because of the slope of Seaman Avenue, and then sort of the retaining wall there. It's at a lower elevation than Seaman Avenue. So that will help. And then the lights are just on the baselines. I don't know what the proper term is, George, but it's not something equivalent to what you see at Baker Field. It's downward.
Right, the lights are focused downward rather than out and horizontally.
Mm-hmm. And what hours does this mean that we will have active baseball going on in the neighborhood? How late are the lights up? I mean,
we can work that out we can work out what times things can be permitted until. I think and George, is there a timer on these lights, or are we anticipating manual?
No, well, in a way it's manual because you're going to come and turn them on when there's a game, and they're not going to be on
When
every
there's not a
night,
game.
just
Okay.
when there's games. So from that standpoint, they'll be manual.
Did you consider solar lighting?
We did. We piloted that last year. I don't know if you saw that, or the year prior, actually. They don't generate enough light to make it viable to play after dark. The summer is less of an issue, obviously. It's more September when, you know, sunset's 5:45, and people, high school games may not really be finishing or get field time to get fit it all in by 5:45. So we need those few extra hours to get in, you know, another game.
Okay, Sally, I'd like to give some other people a turn.
Can I
So
just-
next up,
I
no,
can get one question answered, which is,
Sally,
what
Sally, I
what is
need
the
to
cost?
give other people a chance to ask questions, so I'm going to circle to the rest of the committee and come back to you. Danielle?
Thanks. So I have a few questions as well. The first thing I'll say, though, is I definitely support the recycling, having a resolution about recycling. And I wondered if we could have one of those same big belly recycle bins, because if I understand correctly, they're specifically made for bottles. But also I appreciated Sally's point about how folks in the neighborhood do collect those cans, and I don't know if that would prohibit them from being able to remove them and then recycle them. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say / ask is, considering that the folks who are playing baseball are predominantly Dominican, I'm just wondering about the planning meetings that took place and what the demographic was, and if there were, I know you mentioned engineers and park staff were a part of the design of this project, but if you also consulted actual baseball players.
Absolutely. So all of the current permit holders, you know, one of the primary holders is Inwood Little League, which is run by Alex Martinez and Carlos Britos, and has had long-standing investment by people like Mr. Collado. They were, the meetings were arranged so that they could be there and keep their key users could be there. And all of the permit holders for all of Inwood, in fact, not just the Inwood Little League, but about 12 different baseball groups who hold permits for field time here and at Dykeman Fields, received multiple invitations for this meeting, for the public scoping meeting, and for the initial public scoping meeting.
I will also say that at both scoping meetings, they were well attended by the constituency of people who actually use the field. Y fue traducción.
Great, thank you so much. And okay, so just a couple more questions. So I think you mentioned the permit holders. Are you going to notify, how are you planning to notify folks about the timeline of the project? Just because I'm wondering if there are any fees associated with reserving the field, and I just want to make sure that folks don't reserve in advance or pay if there are fees when they won't in fact be able to use the field.
Absolutely. So we've been coordinating closely with our ball field permit office, which is the recreation division. They've done the outreach since they've got a relationship with all these leagues to supplement our outreach. So we'll tell the permit office, okay, construction is going to be starting at this point in time. You won't want to issue permits for these particular months this season.
Okay, so they will not.
We've already flagged that for them. We're working hand in hand with them. And what we'll likely do, since we have a relationship with all these groups, is look to find a way to accommodate them at other fields uptown so that their program can continue and the community can continue to be served. But it is 3 fields, so that is going to have an impact.
Would it be possible also for you to post signage about the upcoming project in the actual park?
We do. We posted signage about the public meetings to make sure that unofficial groups, find out about it, or regular park users. And lighting was mentioned on those flyers, Sally, and in the sort of broadcast messages we sent. And then when construction starts, the contractor is required to put up signage indicating what the project is, who to contact if there's an issue with it.
Okay, I want to.
In addition to that, it's up on the park's website in the capital tracker, so people can see when design is going to be complete, when construction is going to start.
Okay,
Danielle, I want to actually just give Francisco a chance,
okay,
and then give a couple of the public members a chance, and then I can circle back to you and Sally.
Okay.
Francisco.
Hey guys. So I mean this looks great. My only concern was I was gonna ask about where were the wheelchair access is, like where would they be able to sit and watch the games? But I think I see something here where it says accessible seating bays.
Mhm.
They get the best seats. They're going to be right behind home plate. So that's
That is
amazing. I love that.
I played baseball almost all my life, and one of the issues that I always have in parks is the water fountains and the lack of it working. How can we get any assurance that those things will last, as long as possible?
So something to keep in mind is the water gets winterized. So the water fountains aren't meant to work year round because pipes will freeze and burst. So in peak season, the water fountains are on. Here, I would imagine are we putting in a new water system for these, or are we using the existing reverse backflow preventer, Rebecca?
I think we're going to be looking at the existing system, and we've included budget to, kind of update things as necessary to ensure that they're going to work properly.
Nice,
Okay,
nice.
great.
Yeah.
And there are how many total?
Water fountains. So there's 3 new of the high-low fountains, and then there's a bottle filler at each dugout.
Great.
So those old fountains are gonna be obsolete?
Those old concrete ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're taking those out entirely. They'll be gone, and it'll be new ones that are accessible and hopefully will work much, much better than the ones that are there. But yeah,
Rebecca, do you mind going to that slide to show
absolutely,
Francisco?
absolutely.
Liz,
And
are you
so-
going to ask your question?
Yeah, I got it. How fast are the bottle fillers?
That's a great question.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's an
Okay.
inside committee joke. So.
Okay. So this right here is the new drinking fountain, just to kind of go back to that real quick. And so this is the accessible side, and this is meant for those who can't bend over as easily. So it's kind of usable for all ages and abilities.
Great.
And then
Does the water
let's
have
see.
electrolytes?
I don't think there's anything additional in it.
I'm just curious, since it is on the way to the dog run, does any of these fountains have the lower dog watering capability?
The dog run has that.
Okay, never mind then.
Okay.
Okay, are you good, Francisco? Can I move on to a couple members of the public?
One last thing, the lights.
Yeah.
Are the lights gonna be the same lights they have at the basketball parks on Dykeman?
They're not spotlights. They're downward on the baselines, right, George?
Right. I mean, there'll be some light in the outfield too, so you can play, but they're centered along the baselines because you can't put a pole out in the outfield
Yep.
on this configuration because you can't get past the outfield line.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, next up, we have Hillary Heinzman. I'm taking you off of mute. Oh, no, wait. Hillary, I'm trying to take you off of mute.
Hello,
Okay, this doesn't sound like Hillary.
my name is Hillary Hinsman. I'm sorry if you don't recognize that it can be a name for men as well as for women.
It's 100% my bad, sir.
That's quite all right. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. To Ms. Hoppe, I know you said that there was public notice of meetings about this. I'm in the park every single day. I never saw anything about potential lighting. My question has to do with the lighting and the potential for some serious light pollution. How late are these lights a done deal? They are absolutely going to happen?
Well, our projects first go to the community board, and then the Parks Department also has to present to the city's Public Design Commission.
When we
The idea that these lights will be on as late as a game goes means that the lights could be on until midnight or after midnight.
Well, no, because, no. I'm actually going to jump in and say that the lights can be, the permitting office would stipulate how late the permit goes until. So once.
Yes,
the-
ma'am.
So,
Okay.
and we can also include in our resolution that, we would encourage the Parks Department to cap the permits at a particular time. We might agree as a group that we don't want to see permits go past, 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever the time is, and that, we're not interested in having midnight baseball. That's perfectly reasonable and something that we can and I think should include in our resolution under the resolves.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And I know other people want to speak. I don't want to try and take too long, but may I just say that all of the existing permits, as I understand them, preclude amplified music. Yet
What?
preclude amplified music, right? There's not supposed to be public address systems. They're not supposed to be music playing all through the game. Isn't that correct? But yet,
That's correct.
but yet there is loud, extremely loud use of boom boxes at games in Inwood Hill Park regularly. There is tremendous amount of noise pollution.
So I actually want to
And-
jump in on that as well and agree with you that that is definitely
So
a problem.
you can say that the permitting does X.
Wait.
If there's no enforcement, if there is no enforcement, what good is that?
Understood. I think it's also important to note that while, you know, the sound that you hear is a problem regardless of who is making it, as an enforcement issue, it is oftentimes not the people with the permits who have the boom boxes, but folks who are attending the games. So that's still absolutely annoying from your perspective, but as a matter of enforcement, does not mean that because there's a problem with noise and boom boxes, there's also going to be a problem with lights going on forever. That's something that,
Well, ma'am, yes, but what you're saying is, it seems to me, is that there needs to be a much greater enforcement presence.
point well taken, and I'm actually going to move on to the next question.
And can written comments be?
Point well taken, and as I was about to say, I'm going to move on to the next question, but we can absolutely have our reso reflect that we would like to make sure that there's appropriate enforcement of whatever the permitting requirements are. Next up, we've got Jerry Culligan and then Adele Bartlett. Oh, Jerry? Hello?
Liz, can I make one point in response to that last question?
Sure.
I don't know if he's still on the call, but
He is.
the lights are not controlled by the permit holders. The lights are controlled by the Parks Department, and we have the ability to just cut them off at 10 o'clock, most likely. I don't think they would go beyond 10. I think that's our standard. So, you know, that's something that we could easily control, whereas the noise problem is a little more difficult. We'd actually have to have somebody on site. But the lights are more, frankly, more are easier for us to control.
Okay.
Steve, can anyone turn on and off the lights manually or no?
We wouldn't set it up that way. There'd be.
I think we can. I think we can have a system where it can be cut off by remote control, as we do it in some other places, and that's what I would try to get.
Okay. Jerry Culligan, next up. All right. Jerry seems to be having some issues there. So Jerry, if you want to try and text me your question, I can read it. Next, we had Adele Bartlett.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Hi, you're up.
Hi. I want to first say that even though my this is actually my private Zoom account, and I'm asking a question as a private resident of Inwood. I also, as Hill said, did not know about this meeting, even though obviously no one is frequenting the area for the last 6 weeks. The last time you discussed this, I know there was some, you were discussing lighting, and I apologize, I came to the meeting late, so I may have missed this. But have you looked into extending the lighting to the basketball, tennis court area?
I believe we spoke about that at the last meeting that you attended, Adele.
And
that's not something that's currently funded.
It's too expensive, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask that, you guys, the engineers are so smart, and I know you're like geniuses to us non-scientists, but where I think there's been some discussion about the fear that the super lighting of the baseball fields is going to accentuate darkness both in the LA and the other courts at dusk times. And have you looked into that at all?
Well, the LA already has a number of lights along it, so I don't see that would become darker. I mean, it wouldn't be quite as bright as the ball field, but the lighting is still there, and there's still also the lighting along Seaman Avenue, along that pathway and around. So I don't anticipate those being dark spots. And, ball field 4 and 2 will not be used at the same time at night while there's ball field 1. So the light will gray out as it eventually goes out there.
Yeah, I'd like to make it clear that the lighting is only on ball field 1. It's not on more than one field. It's only on ball field 1. And
right.
And frankly, our concern was to make sure that that it was in an area where which was not directly across the street from where people live. So it's our sense that that ball field 1 would have minimal impact. The light any possible light pollution on ball field 1 would be minimal.
And one thing I'd like to add to that, Steve, the lights on ball field 1 are sort of focused inward towards the park, and they're really not going to be focused to the outside towards Seaman.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next I want to see Jerry Culligan. Are you still on this call and wanting to ask a question? I see you with your hand raised. I've got you on. I took you off of mute. Going once, going twice.
Liz, he put a question in the chat at the very end.
Okay. Goodness, I'm only just seeing.
Oh, I thought you saw them. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions in the chat.
All right, that is so my bad. thought I was monitoring the chat, and in fact, I was not. So, question from Jerry: paths or choke points need to make sure construction does not interfere with people. Also, construction access on the malls needs to be limited. So can someone address that?
Do you mean the malls, the planted areas just inside the park from Seaman and Isham?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. Prior to construction starting, we have a pre-construction kickoff, and the field staff are directly involved in that, and we'll be sure to raise the need for circulation around the fields and for that main thoroughfare. You're right, Jerry, we get tons of foot traffic from the farmers market, from New York Roadrunners programs, people going to the tennis courts right there. So we'll want to minimize impact on those sort of lawn areas and that main feeder into the park from Seaman and Isham.
Okay, thank you. Next we had up Beth Pomasemi. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
What's your question?
Okay. I have a similar question as Hillary. It's pretty much regarding enforcement of all the park's rules throughout the baseball playing area. I've lived across from the park for years and nothing has seemed to change. The renovation plans are beautiful. They're gorgeous. And I'm concerned about the lighting, allowing the mayhem to continue. There's rampant drinking, which isn't legal in the park, littering, heavy duty littering, and public urinating. And this has been going on for years, but it seems to be becoming more brazen. And there's absolutely no enforcement. It's a shame because it's the most beautiful park. And I admire the enthusiasm and zeal that is present in this baseball scene, but the peripheral activities are a disgrace. And
so I want to, it's partly a parks issue and it's partly, a PEP, Parks Enforcement Patrol issue, and it's partly an NYPD issue. We don't have anybody from Parks Enforcement or from the NYPD in this meeting, but I think that, we have a long body of legitimate community outcry around some of these enforcement issues. And I think, and we can obviously, when we get to this point of the meeting, I think we can talk about including some language in the resolved clause that calls on Parks Enforcement and the 34th Precinct not to, I'm not looking to criminalize behavior, but I think it's appropriate to have appropriate enforcement around noise, public urination, that kind of thing. And I think it's probably appropriate to include some kind of language to that effect in this resolution.
And I will absolutely take that back and report it to the Deputy Inspector of the Park Enforcement Patrol.
Yeah.
And I do know that we work with the NYPD, and there have been several times when they, have had to respond on site to break up and stop activity.
I've kind of moved my screen so that I've minimized the screen share and maximized my gallery view. If I could get my committee members to kind of give me some body language, thumbs up, something on if you agree with that, if that makes sense to you. Yes, no, having some language around enforcement.
I have a comment around that.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to potentially enforce the littering and drinking, but regarding public urination, I don't believe in criminalizing that. I think we should think about extending the hours for the toilets. I don't know if that's something that's possible. I also noticed that there are porta potties, but they always seem to be locked. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. And if they're so if somebody could speak to that, but that would be my opinion on that.
Okay.
I don't believe in criminalizing.
I would agree with you on that. And I do actually want to just let you know that in conversations that we've had around these issues prior to your coming on to the committee, there's a really fine balance between enforcing stuff that, and making sure the quality of life things are enforced without also criminalizing behavior, because that, I see my colleague Curtis, who chairs the Public Safety Committee, nodding, and that's always a fine line that we walk, and I 100% agree with you. Curtis, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would agree with Danielle, who's my assistant chair of public safety. We think a lot alike. So I stand by what she just mentioned, that it's important to, people are not choosing to urinate on the street because they just want to do it. They're doing it because perhaps there's an access issue. So thank you, Danielle, for bringing that access issue up. And I do agree.
I also want to just clarify that the porta sands were a measure that parks implemented to help minimize the public urination. We allow permit holders to have designated porta sands on site for their league's use. But you raise a good point. We should probably require them to have some sort of indicator of who it belongs to, so that if there's an issue or if there's a problem, and also just so the public doesn't think this, restroom option isn't being provided to them by the city. It's because it belongs to the league and it's part of a condition of their permit. We'll ask for that to be better identified.
Yeah, that's a great solution. Thank you, Jennifer.
Great. Okay, so I just want to read out a couple of questions here. I've got something from Renee Nisavocia. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. She says she lives across the street, had some concerns about lighting and people lingering later in the park. Also issues with inebriated players, garbage, and alcohol bottles. I just want to echo that that's another question being asked, but I think we've kind of spent a fair amount of time on that, as well as the issue of the comfort station. It would be great if there were a sufficient footprint to build another comfort station, and if there were enough funds to do that, but lacking either of those things, I think we need to just kind of roll with the situation in the physical plant as best we can. I've got a couple of other questions that relate to other parks things, and I just want anonymous attendee to know that I see your questions and they'll be addressed. We'll get to that later in the agenda. Juan asks two questions. One, will the pandemic affect this project? My guess is probably not, because the timeline is that the construction isn't going to be happening until sometime beginning in 2022. So by that time, I think we're probably gonna have COVID ironed out, although I'm a little reluctant to predict the future on that one. Does that sound about right, Parks?
Yes.
Okay, and a specific question about the batting cage. Can it be a double tunnel? That is, there would be two tunnels side by side. I don't really understand that question. I'm hoping that someone who plays baseball does.
I think we've seen that existing in other parks where essentially there are kind of two alleyways that allow for pitching or batting. So more than one player can use it at the same time. I guess given the limitations of the site and that steep grade change that is in the area that we identified as kind of the best location for it, it doesn't seem especially feasible to include a double wide. We would have to have a pretty big retaining wall to allow for that to happen.
I see. Okay.
Actually, Chair, I do have one question that
Yeah.
actually brought something up. Thank you. So actually, on the same vein of this double tunnel, I know that in the pictures you had shown, the warping of the fence due to batting practice on there, since there's not an ability for two folks to be obviously in the tunnel, there's probably going to be a need for folks to continue doing batting practice. Are you thinking about reinforcing the fence along some of the more used areas and possibly putting up a sign?
Yeah, that's right. And so that came up a lot in the previous scope meetings, the concern about the warping of the fence. And so one of the ways that we've included to, I guess, mitigate that issue is, I think one of the Little League members mentioned including additional bars going horizontally at certain sections of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Where I guess batters would typically hit into the fence to try to discourage that kind of use of the fence.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm not sure if discouraging would be the way to do it, because they'll either find somewhere else or they really need to warm up. Is there any kind of, I think the last time we talked about this in the committee meeting, there was conversation of putting up some type of a permanent mat there.
Okay. I guess that's something that we can look into a little bit more. And
thanks.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. So just in terms of time management, we've got one more question from the public, from Candida, who I'm gonna unmute in a second. And then we have a quick final question each from Sarah, Francisco, and Danielle. And then I would like to move.
And me, Liz.
And Daryl, okay, and Daryl. And then I would like to move on to a vote on this plan and then move the agenda because it's already almost 10 to 8. So Candida. Are you unmuted? I think I unmuted you. I'm really terrible at this. I keep clicking unmute. I think Candida, you might have to unmute yourself. Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
No. Oh, great. It is not my first time to hear these conversations. I like the things you will try to do in the park. I think so it's a good idea. I don't have nothing more to say. That I like it, the changes we do.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Daryl. Since you did not actually ask a question, I'm gonna bring you in front of.
I mean, I did, but it's okay. You sure? I don't want to.
Oh, okay. Then in that case, I'm gonna go back to Sally first.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Just the two things that weren't answered when I asked before, at least not, I don't think sufficiently. Of the total budget, what is the estimated cost of the lighting? And also, was any direct outreach done to the surrounding buildings on Seaman Avenue? Because this is basically a whole new ball game. I mean, we're going from a day baseball stadium to basically day and night games. And I'm concerned also that they would last until 10 o'clock, because when we get special permits in the parks, we have to be done by 8. So that's my follow-up to that. And then 2 quick questions, which is, it looks like the bottle fillers are only in the dugouts. And I think y'all are probably aware the DEP is there most weekends on the summer getting water from the fire hydrant so that people can actually use their bottles. And I wonder if there's consideration given to having bottle fillers for the general public. And then my other question is, with the permeable surface, it went from 5 to 7%. I don't understand what that means. That seems like a small amount, but I might just be too stupid.
You are absolutely not stupid at all.
Absolutely not. I'll just start with the last part with the permeability. And so essentially, the majority of our field space, I'll just go to that slide real quick, is open lawn. And I guess in this assessment of permeability, open lawn isn't considered a permeable surface. And so we're essentially looking at, initially, we were looking at there's existing tree canopy, which is these green circles here. And then there was some existing stone paving that just has like gravel in between. And so that was considered kind of the existing areas that really help with catching and managing rainwater. And so then, you know, compared to, this is, you know, hundreds of thousands of square feet of open space. Right. And so really these planting areas, although we're putting them in places that can really help with some of the major site concerns, they're really not a large square footprint compared to the vastness of the open lawn. And so it doesn't look like a big change, but it's kind of, in terms of the project area, it's really, I guess, some of the biggest impact that we could have given the conditions of the site. So we really tried to maximize what we could do in terms of permeability.
But isn't it?
Why is lawn not permeable?
Yeah. How can?
It's
well,
like
so
recharge to the water table.
That's right. I think it's this condition that oftentimes with lawn, there's kind of a really thick matting of roots underneath. And so there's a little bit of infiltration, but in terms of sustainability, they're really looking at places where water kind of sits and sinks right in. And sometimes with lawn, it can kind of, you know, sheet across and it doesn't infiltrate as well as like a planting bed with mulch and, you know, those kind of deeper roots.
Okay.
And so I completely agree. It does infiltrate. It's just not considered as effective as some other kind of ways. And it's not part of the calculation that we use.
Okay, and what is the cost of the lights as a function of this overall project?
Sure. So, gosh,
I believe we have it at 1.2 million.
No,
yeah.
no. Wasn't it at 1.65 or 1.75?
That's the funding that was added. Yes, you're right.
Okay,
we don't know the true cost until it goes out for bid to, you know, really.
Okay, if you could, yeah. So is it fair that to say that of which 1.6 to 1.75 million is allocated for the lighting?
Yes.
Okay,
That's right.
thank you. All right, and then quickly, we've got Sally, I really need to move on.
Okay, so I have two questions. The first question pertains to the fountains. I was wondering, in light of COVID and future thinking about hygiene, if it would be possible to install foot pedals for the fountains, and also if there's going to be any lead testing. And then my second question is about the ball field for picnic area. I'm just wondering, is that set in stone? It's interesting to me that folks would want that there instead of additional seating. So I'm just wanting to have additional information on how that decision was made.
Sure. So the Parks does do lead testing on its drinking fountains. In terms of COVID, right now, drinking fountains aren't on because of COVID.
I think foot pedals would be my preference if that's an option.
Foot pedals for filling water bottles?
Turn the water on when you're going to the drinking fountain. Instead of pushing the thing, you can
Right.
step on
I think the concern is, though, your mouth is getting close to a place where someone's mouth just was, right?
No, my concern is on touching the
okay.
But if you have a foot pedal and then the arc of water, your mouth isn't going to be
Gonna
on
anywhere near you.
the
Exactly.
thing, and you're not touching anything. It's pretty hygienic.
Well,
something we've done at other sites, Rebecca or George?
I don't know that we've used a foot pedal in any other park project. That does add an element of mechanics to it, which adds something else that could break down and require repair. So that's one consideration, and I don't know of any products right now, there's none that we're using that have a foot pedal.
Is it possible for you to explore that?
We can do some investigation into it, see what's available, but generally, we try for it to be consistent with all our projects and have standardized materials, but we can look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We love to be cutting edge.
Yeah, I want to actually just, sorry to interject again, but all throughout Europe, when you go into bathrooms, the sinks, for the most part, use a foot pedal on the floor to turn on and off the taps, as opposed to using wrist blades or knobs. They're touchless. So the technology exists. I don't know if it exists for water fountains, but I have a funny feeling that Danielle is probably not the only person who's wondering about this. And it seems to me that if there were ever a time to look into this as a new thing, seeing if that's something that is manufactured, or if that's something that by the time you're getting around to installing them, because that's like almost 2 years away anyway. I'm just trying to read the room for body language. Do we like the idea of not requiring it, but requiring that you at least look into it? I'm seeing thumbs up, I'm seeing nodding. Okay.
The point, Liz, is just to reduce, I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
you agree with my sentiment, but the point is to reduce touch points. And
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah.
so it's just one less thing that folks are touching.
Love
Yeah,
it.
let me add that the big belly trash receptacles would have foot pedals.
Yes,
Yes.
we like it.
And then my
Okay.
question is about ball field 4 and that picnic area.
So, a lot of people, when you're a parent and your kid is playing on the ball field, you are congregating with other parents or caregivers whose kids are playing. So like having a place to put the snacks down for their break, that type of thing. It's sort of a supportive amenity for league play, particularly.
This is totally something that came up at the January. I don't remember if it came up at the first scoping meeting in December of 2018, but this was absolutely something that came up in January.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it's meant to be like for attendees and like to support the players, not something that's used, by outside groups necessarily, you know?
Well, it sounds like a good idea. I was just wondering how the decision was made, if it was more coming from like, if it was suggested as a good idea, or if it was something that was specifically requested, like if the ball
It was
field is-
specifically requested.
Okay. Thank you.
Francisco. You got to unmute yourself.
Okay, so quick question. I've seen this on a lot of university campuses. It's like a panic button where women, or well, especially for women who might be attacked at the park or for any reason need to have access to the police quickly. Is that something that's ever been discussed in any parks? I mean, we're talking about Inwood, but just in general, something that people can get the fire department, police department, EMT to the park specifically?
Yes, Francisco, that's a good point. They've been implemented in several parks now uptown when there are new projects. We can reach out to NYPD and see if some can be put in this area. We've got some on the Fort Washington waterfront, some at different waterfront sites on the High Bridge, but that's a good point. Emergency call boxes.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And lastly, I just want to make a quick comment. I enjoy the back and forth that we always give here, but I just want everyone to really keep in mind when we start talking about enforcement and that kind of language, especially understanding where we live and what's around you. We don't live in Idaho. This is New York City. This is Washington Heights. We know what it is. If we're at the park at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and people are playing loud music, it's a Saturday. I want everyone to start thinking in that way, because I just hear a lot of, how can I put it? I hear a lot of things that just don't seem to make a lot of logical sense. Sometimes in general, and even in the general meetings, sometimes we speak as if we're just representing us and not the entire group. So just want everyone to keep in mind that if you live by a park and it's the summer, you might have to deal with some noise. That's all I'm saying.
That is a totally fair observation. And with that, I would like to, seems like we got all the questions asked and
Liz.
answered. Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did that again. Daryl, my assistant chair, you get the last word on.
Right. Just 2 quick questions. Can you remind us what the permit period is for the year?
For ball fields?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it goes through the fall. There's spring, there's definitely summer, and then there's I know Inwood Little League goes through
So like May to November, May to October.
October, early October.
I was just wondering, maybe from anyone in Parks who knows?
Begins in April.
Okay, maybe anyone in Parks knows, or someone who lives closer. I'm not there that often. Are there any activities in the off season that are frequent for that particular area?
What?
What do you mean? We have New York Roadrunners goes through. We have, night hikes, tennis, basketball.
No, I meant on those particular fields.
On the particular field.
Anything happening.
Oh, you mean permitted use?
Non-permanent things that are happening
like
on a regular
picnicking.
basis in the off season.
Yeah, you'll have people kicking soccer balls or, playing catch. Inwood Academy for Leadership, periodically goes there for, recess or outings. And we have another school that's going in, School in the Square, but I believe that's going to be lower grades. I don't know that they'll venture.
Okay, I was just really wondering if there were any amenities that we could provide those in the off season that are needed, but if they're not, then that's fine.
Usually more free play.
There's a lot, there are definitely pickup games. All right. So with that, sort of reading the Zoom, as it were, it seems like people like this, would like to make sure that permitting of games doesn't go too late, that there's appropriate enforcement in a way that doesn't, criminalize behavior. And we have some language on how we phrase that in other similar resolutions. So I don't think, I think we're all in agreement on that point. So I don't think we need to craft the actual wording here. So we would have a resolution, or just look, thumbs up, body language, tell me in general, we like this proposal? Yes, no? Committee members, Danielle, I can't see you, Sally, because you don't have yourself on your camera.
Right.
I like it, but I don't know how I feel about enforcement. I think it would be good to have some language in there, because it sounds like some folks on this call are concerned about that, namely folks who live nearby. But I think it would be, I would prefer if we would have explicit language around, the time that the lights would go off. And I also think it would be good to have recycling.
Right. I didn't quite get to that yet. Before we get to any of the caveats, I just want to get a general sense. Do we support the proposal as presented by the Parks Department?
Okay.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I'm concerned about the lighting and the.
Okay, Sally, I really need you to turn your camera on so that we can see you. Thank you. So before we get to the other things, I'm trying to be linear about this. Can I get a show of hands on if we like the general presentation by the Parks Department? Sally, can't see your hands.
Right. I didn't get to my questions answered, like the refillable for the community, the lighting, the outreach. So I'm not quite there yet.
Okay. So in addition to the presentations, the general points that I heard from members of the city and from members of the community are that we have strong recommendations with regard to available recycling, to pilot recycling, and to make available some kind of recycling collection, specifically in the dugouts, that we have refillable bottle fillers that are available to the public, not just in the dugouts, that the Parks Department look at foot pedal operation for foot pedals for touchless operation of the water fountains, if that's possible, that we have a clear limit on the time frame for permitting night games. And well, so there are those 4 items. I'll get to the enforcement in a moment, since that seems to be a little more of an issue. But is there general agreement on those 4 points?
And then Francisco's point about the safety boxes.
Ah, yes, the safety boxes. So lights, limit.
Those would be NYPD call boxes.
And also, Chair, once you're done with that.
So it's light limits, bottle fillers, touchless. Okay, yes.
And also alternative practice space versus discouragement of practicing.
The pads.
The pads,
Right?
yes.
Pads along bottom of fences for kids
Thanks.
to do batting practice or.
Yep.
Okay.
You said the recycling, right, Liz?
I did. So then with regard to enforcement, again, I'm not a fan of group writing exercises because I just think in this context, they're a little bit tedious. And it's already 8:07 and I'd very much like to end this meeting by 8:30 and we still have a fairly substantial agenda item, but we need to I think it's appropriate to be mindful of certain noise, public urination, public drinking issues, while also being sensitive to and thoughtful of, as Francisco put it, it's a park, it's summer, there's people, there's gonna be noise. Folks who live next to the park are living next to an active park, not a library. So there's gonna be some active use, and I think it's a problem if we go about like criminalizing that. So we have language in other resolutions that this committee has passed. So rather than try to recreate it here, I would look to grabbing that language there. And as I do with every resolution, I will run it past the committee first to make sure it captures the tenor of the discussion. So with that in mind, are you good with that? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay. In that case, and then the reso would also have some information about the cost and about the timeline. It would mention the public scoping process, the public engagement process around this.
Sorry, Liz.
Yes.
Also, can you include, you just mentioned public engagement. Can you also include something in there about the Parks Department notifying permit holders of the construction? Just
Yeah,
like,
we're not
I
gonna.
mean, I can, but I could, but because that's standard operating procedure and something that they always do and that they have always done in every similar project like this, I mean, I could, but it's.
yeah, I guess I just don't know enough, and I just worry about folks.
No, I totally get that. I guess what I'm trying to tell you as chair of this committee is that is an extremely good point. That is an extremely important thing for parks to do. And I'm just letting you know that as an agency, they know that, and that's part of their standard operating procedure. It's already baked in.
Okay.
So I'm pleased to report that we don't need to tell them to do that. They already know to do that, and they already do that.
Great.
Members of the committee in favor? I've got Danielle. I've got, this is really kind of hard on Zoom. I've got Nobles, Danielle.
Maybe you could take that screen off.
Yeah, if you could unshare.
Rebecca.
It might be good if we just hit the raise our hand button. You could just count.
Or we can write in the chat. That's easy.
No, it's easy. I'll just call the roll. So I got Nobles, Danielle, Daryl, Sally. Are you abstaining or are you in favor? Say what?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Who else did I miss? Francisco, are you in favor? Okay, Francisco, I'm in favor. And Alexis, you're in favor. And then Sally is abstaining. Is that everybody on the committee? Okay, and then other board members. I think the only other board member left on the call is Curtis. He's saying yes. Are there any other board members that I missed? No, there are not.
I'm not voting.
Oh, yeah, Steve is not. Yeah, that's why I didn't count you, but Steve is not voting.
Hey, Liz, I'm voting with my hand up. Thank you.
Oh, Omar, hello. So sorry. I missed you because you didn't have your video on.
No worries.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. I apologize to the Cultural Affairs piece for how long that took. Jen, if you could give your capital report, and I just wanted to throw out this question that somebody had quite specifically, if you could address it. When will the construction at Audubon Playground on Audubon Ave between 169 and 170 be completed? Furthermore, David Friedland Square on 170, has become a homeless encampment. Are there steps being taken to keep the squares clean and sanitized? That's an ongoing issue. So if you can address that as well. And then someone emailed me a question about the almost grand staircase in Highbridge Park and whether or not that is going to get repaired along with the other phase 1 and phase 2 Highbridge Park thing.
So Audubon Playground has had some delays because of COVID. Construction is now slated to be complete by the end of June, and that's for the playground. The Comfort Station is a separate construction contract since it's a building, and that will take some additional time. But the playground itself, as of, I guess, last week, was projected to be done end of June. David Friedlander Square, yes, it's a problem, as are a lot of the other public spaces in that area. We've worked with the 33rd Precinct and park enforcement, but people are still congregating there, and then they are breaking through the barricades. They also need somewhere to go. And I know the city is, particularly now during the pandemic, is adding more resources to help protect the homeless, particularly if they become infected. But we're aware of the issue, and we're working with the 33rd Precinct, but it would necessitate having sort of 24/7 enforcement at the site if we didn't want people to be congregating there. So right now the focus is on sort of COVID response. When that's better managed, I think we'll go back to focusing on other enforcement and social service needs. The almost grand staircase at Highbridge Park, that is not it's not funded as part of the Anchor Parks project. It is, however, one of the recommendations in the overall master plan that we did with the community. So it's on the list of recommendations, and once additional capital funding gets allocated, that's something that could be reconstructed. The grand staircase at 183rd is being completely overhauled, that big historic staircase that this committee actually was instrumental in highlighting the need for. So any other specific sort of capital related projects?
Nature Center?
George, I know it's in procurement, Sally, but I don't know if there's currently a hold on awarding new contracts. George, is there any update on that?
I don't really have an update on the status of that one, but I know OMB has been only dealing with COVID-19 issues. So any contracts that were in the pipeline before that and weren't signed, they're on hold.
Okay. So to be determined, Sally. Same with some of our other projects. Things are still somewhat up in the air, as most city agencies are sort of being tasked to work on COVID response, including the Parks Department. So when you're out in the parks, our staff, our team is considered frontline workers. So please be sure you say thank you. They're risking their lives to bring us the solace and beauty of Uptown's parks. But wear a mask when you're out in the park and practice. Keep 6 feet distance, but be social. A lot of people showed up for our mask distribution. We've done 5 different sites uptown, just helping distribute thousands of masks. There are also ambassadors out in the parks helping educate on keeping safe social distance and distributing masks. Ambassadors, park enforcement, urban park rangers, the NYPD have been out there helping with this. And the Parks Department has also distributed more than 3 million meals. We've gotten involved in meal distribution. And I'm sure we'll be pivoting to help with other pandemic response efforts. So please be sure to thank a park worker. not everybody feels comfortable coming out and using the parks at this time. So the Parks Department has developed something called Parks at Home. It's a compendium of online resources, and they keep adding to it. There are meditation moments. They did one at Inwood Hill. There's going to be another one tomorrow in an uptown park. There are virtual tours of several different citywide sites. They did a great geology tour of Inwood Hill. If you go on nyc.gov/parks and click on Parks at Home, you can see all the resources. There's mental health exercises. There's physical health exercises to do within your home. And there's arts and culture. There's playlists. And there's also Parks at Home for kids. There are a lot of new art making and activities for kids. So if you're someone who can't get outside or doesn't feel safe going outside, we're bringing the parks to you at home. And the Fort Tryon Park Trust has done the same with some online resources as well.
Cool.
In the interest of time, are there any questions or?
Another question.
Sally, you got 30 seconds, and that's your last question.
Me or Sally?
What's
What
going
is it?
on with- did I read it or dream it? What's going on with the marina? Is it now functioning, or is it going to be opening soon?
The marina is functioning. As many of you may recall, the bankruptcy court sort of transferred the marina to the Parks Department, and we've been operating it for the past year. So that's good news. And we have staff on site, and we're lining up more staff to be there.
Okay.
If you didn't know, the docks, kayak launches and whatnot have been reopened, but you've got to practice the 6 feet mandatory distance and wear a mask when using them.
Okay. Alexis.
About Roger Morris Park. Are all the parks that the historic houses are set in, are they all closed?
I don't know. I just know that for security purposes, Dykeman Farmhouse, the land around it, and Roger Morris Park, which is the land around the mansion, are closed while those facilities are closed. We're still going in to Roger Morris Park to maintain the horticulture, to mow the lawn, so that when the facilities reopen, that resource will be, the parkland will be accessible and beautiful for everyone.
Great, thank you. Danielle, you get the last word.
Thanks. So I'm still sort
You
of
get the penultimate word.
Thanks. So I'm still sort of new to parks. So I was just wondering if there are any plans to install community gardens in parks across the city. If you could just speak to that.
So across the city, I'm not familiar with, but you can go on, the Parks Department has sort of a division called
on like our area.
Green Thumb. So the challenge is, of course, is having a secure site with soil that you can safely protect, and not displacing a current use, right? So those are 3 conditions that are a challenge to meet. We had looked to do sort of a community farm, but it would displace sort of the full public access to an area, so that was overruled. We looked at another site that is in parks inventory that's not mapped parkland, so it wouldn't have necessarily the same sort of legal confines. But there was a pretty active community group that wants to keep its active recreation and programming there. So we didn't want to take that away. So those challenges, along with the challenge of keeping soil safe for food, makes it a bit difficult. There's the rain garden. There's the community garden over by Roger Morris Park. There's the Riley Levin Children's Garden in Sherman Creek. But at the current time, we're not looking to expand any community gardening.
So I do want to say this is an important issue, but it's a short question with an extremely long answer, and we don't really have the time to explore it now. But we can figure out how to put this on the agenda and maybe roll it into June or September when the Washington Heights Inwood Food Council, for whom this is a huge and important issue. This is a great example of a short question with a long answer and something that we should really be talking about, but not here right now. So
Yeah, no, definitely. I figured I'd just throw it out there.
Totally good. So let's put that on the agenda of a future meeting. I'm going to give Daryl the last word on this, and then we're going to move to the cultural part of the meeting because this is Parks and Cultural Affairs. Daryl.
I just had a question about parks in general. I know some of them, including some in our area, have those mister things. So obviously now they're discontinued. Has there been any data on if that spreads COVID? And so will those be closed for the foreseeable
You mean
future?
sprinklers?
Yeah, or they missed or some,
Like the playgrounds, like the children's water features.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, some go straight down, but some are more mist-like.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I can look into it, but I don't think there are plans to stop those.
Okay.
I don't know that they actually spread the disease.
It looks like Steve's trying to say something.
Yeah.
Aren't we planning to install them at Ann Loftus?
Yes.
And that's a major feature of the Ann Loftus project.
Yes.
So
we
far,
might
the
wanna-
question is, are they going to be discontinued this summer because of COVID? And to my knowledge, no.
Or for longer. I mean, it goes, the mist from these goes much further than 6 feet that a person can spread. So
there's no evidence that they
But this is
But
clean water.
there's no evidence because no one's tried to get it yet. Like, I'm just trying to get it.
You're right.
I mean, if I may, Chair, when it comes to water molecules, the person would still need to cough. I'm assuming that masks would still be semi-enforced, especially for the near-term future. So there's really no problem with clean water coming out in a mist unless someone coughs in it, but you still run that risk every day on the street.
Yeah.
I think someone should look into that.
Duly noted. Okay. So
Can I just mention that our Monsignor Kent Playground project is moving forward and is now entered the procurement phase and should go out for bid shortly?
Okay, thank you.
And I am pushing to get the Nature Center declared an essential project so that construction contract can be awarded and that project can also move forward.
That would be great. Do you need anything from the board to push on that? Is a letter from the board appropriate or not really?
That's a good question. Let me ask about that. Maybe it
Okay,
would be, yeah.
Right, but so then just very quickly, since we don't really write letters, we only speak by resolution. If it turns out that it would be appropriate to have a resolution to that effect, are we good as a committee passing a resolution that we consider this to be essential and we would like to move that forward? Is there anybody who opposes that? Show of hands. I mean, Sally, if she could vote twice, she would.
Sorry, can you just repeat what it would be?
So the question is, we may or may not need a resolution for this, but if we need a resolution, are we in favor of a resolution encouraging the Parks Department to declare the Inwood Hill Nature Center project as an essential project so that it can move forward in these COVID times towards completion, to complete the nature center.
Well, let me tell you, this is already the recommendation of the Parks Department.
Right. It's
So I would have,
DOT.
I would have to let you know who to direct the resolution to.
Yeah.
But
That we-
this is a decision being made beyond the Parks Department.
Yeah. We already have deemed it essential.
Okay, so,
We've recommended that it be deemed essential.
I mean, this community has been jumping up and down since 5 minutes after Sandy ended to please get our nature center back. So, I mean, it may or may not require a resolution from the board, since that's been consistently the opinion of the board. But is there, if a resolution is required, is there anybody who objects to that? Okay. So moving on to the cultural affairs piece, I want to just scan. I'm going to put into the queue first Martin. Sally, I see your hand, but I'm sorry, I'm going to actually put you last because everybody else has had you've had multiple opportunities to speak. Marty, and then Natalie, and then I'll take the cue from the attendees.
Thank you, Liz. Good evening, everyone. I'm Martin Collins, Uptown Art Stroll Coordinator for the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance. And our 18th annual Uptown Art Stroll is virtual events are now being accepted for the dates through July 2020. And anyone who's having a visual or performing or visual arts program would like to share it with us through the end of July 2020 can do so at artstroll.com. A couple of quick events that I wanted to mention. We have very popular Thursday evenings at 7:30. Washington Heights, Inwood, and West Harlem artists are doing stay home studios, virtual tours of their home studios. And we have our next virtual tour coming up this Thursday, May 14th at 7:30 with Rose Teller, who is a wonderful Washington Heights artist. And she'll be showing us her wonderful sculpture, and all of those details. And the Zoom link is at artstroll.com. Next Wednesday, May 20th, we'll have a curator's walk with Patricia Miranda, also a Washington Heights Inwood artist, who will, at 7:30 next Wednesday, show us through her works. And then May 21st, a week from Thursday, our Stay Home Open Studios continues with Uniqua Simmons, a Harlem artist, who will share her works with us at 7:30 p.m. And lastly, we have a poster contest, Inwood Strong Restaurant Poster Contest, which is ongoing through May 26th, an award of $750 to the winning artist. You must be a Washington Heights, Inwood, or West Harlem, a resident artist to participate. And the details on all of those programs that are coming up in the Uptown Art Stroll are at artstroll.com. Thank you, Liz.
Fantastic. Can you do me a favor and just shoot me the quick written version so I can drop all that into the minutes? Thank you so much. Next up.
Liz, I'm sorry. Could you, are Rebecca and George still on the call?
They are.
Could you let them know that they can sign off?
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for attending. This was super helpful. Thank you. Thank you. And have a good evening.
Okay. Thanks so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night, and thanks to the public for participating, and good night.
All right. Thanks, Steve. All right. Next up, we have Natalie Espino from the Borough President's Office.
Hello. It's very good to be with you guys tonight. I'll be very brief because I know you have a packed agenda, but I want to just make a couple of announcements of particular relevance to the Cultural Affairs and Parks Committee, as I used to call it when I was on it. On May 22nd at 6 p.m., we will be having the third installment of the Manhattan Borough President's Northern Manhattan Uptown Arts and Culture teleconference. So keep an eye out for the daily updates, as I'm sure you all do, to find out all kinds of important things. But we will be soon posting a program and the Zoom link to join that. Again, the cultural organizations, as you all know, have been hit very hard by the budget cuts, by the closures, and the future is very uncertain for something that has fueled the economy in Manhattan for so long. and that is an important part of this very local community. Marty, as always, to you and Noma, I do not have words to thank you guys for the work that you do. The other announcement that I wanted to make, I had announced this at full board, but I really want to reiterate that nycgo.com. If you go there, you will find the links for Virtual NYC, and there is the contact form that you can fill out. If you have any virtual experiences to share, this will go on there. The borough president is particularly concerned that right now, the offerings from Manhattan are all south of 60th Street. So make sure that if you have a virtual gallery, something like the art stroll, a performance that is taking place, this is a great opportunity for a lot of our small organizations that, while it is beautiful that they have had this hyper-local mission up until now, you never know when you will suddenly have a devout follower of the art stroll or of the Inwood Film Festival or of all the wonderful programs that we have here, like Higher Ground, suddenly coming out of other boroughs, other places in the country, and expanding your audiences. We want to make sure that you're represented. I am particularly interested in what happens when you guys go and complete the form, how easy it is for you to put your programs on there. And I will be sending out an email to all of the arts and culture stakeholders in my mailing list by tomorrow morning. I will include Liz in that as well, so that she can amplify that and share with this committee with those links. And I want to see the art stroll on there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Megan Burns.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. So Morris Jumel Mansion has been working really hard to adapt and create virtual offerings during this moment in time. And starting next week, we are going to be launching a new public lecture series called Virtual Parlor Chats. The first one will be, these are free with registration, and the details are already up on our site. It'll be May 20th, starting off with a guest presenter from Historic Hudson Valley, talking about Mary Phillips Morris. And then we're also working together with other historic houses to discuss plans for the possibly virtual alternatives to summer camps right now. So stay tuned.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up, we've got Alexander Campos. I'm bringing him in, and I just want to say, Alex, why don't you turn on your video? And I do just want to say that the Hispanic Society had the most interesting, gallery talk conversation. It was really fun, and I learned a lot. So thank you for having such fantastic programming.
I don't think I could turn on my video, so sorry. So I don't have the button, not showing up. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's Alex from the Hispanic Society. I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Liz, for that. Yes, we're doing all kinds of virtual talks and tours and whatnot, like everybody else is. I'm very grateful that we're reaching the new audience and so forth. I really want to say thank you to all the support and interest by the political arena in supporting the arts and culture and their efforts to preserve funding in various ways. In particular, Gail Brewer, and of course, Councilman from Parks and Culture. So we are really grateful for all their support. Councilman Van Bruin, for his support. And so, of course, everybody's helping out and reaching out to support the arts and culture. So that really makes a difference, and we're very grateful for that. I also want to say that due to this situation, the Uptown Cultural Groups have been meeting on a regular basis on Mondays to discuss ways of collaboration. And of course, we are very grateful to be part of that, and grateful to the colleagues in different organizations throughout Upper Manhattan, both performing and visual. literary, and all large and small. So it's really a great, if nothing else, this virus has brought us closer together. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And we hope to even create more engaging programs for all the community and of course, broader parts of New York City as well. So thank you so much, Liz and all.
Super. Thank you for that report. Veronica Liu, you got anything from Word Up?
Hi. Yeah, we've had some great events at Word Up, and we've been able to implement, live interpretation at the events. One of the events with Julia Alvarez and Edwidge Danticat, we were able to do live interpretation into 2 languages, into Spanish and into Haitian Creole, and have had fun experimenting with the Zoom features to increase accessibility. Because of these events that have gotten bigger, these were events that were meant to be big offsite events, and so doing them online they've still been relatively big, but much smaller than they would have been. But we've been happy with how things have turned out, and we have a bunch of events coming up still. So the usual slate of Word Up local authors, local artists, musicians are starting to come back into our calendar. So I'd encourage everyone to please check it out. And also, if you are someone who wants to do an event and is unsure how to make it happen, we're happy to work with you and do rehearsals and stuff to do something through the Word Up accounts. And we also have a GoFundMe that we've just started because we know this will take a while and that a lot of our how we operate is based on big in-person events and offsite events, and that even if we can open the store and still make books accessible, that the income from events and stuff is going to be slow going for months. So we just started a GoFundMe to help with that. And otherwise, Word Up volunteers have been dispatched to all kinds of other things in the neighborhood. So if you ever need volunteer help too, we do have a whole crew of volunteers who've been distributing food, distributing books alongside food, been distributing goods to clothes, just all kinds of things. So please, feel free to continue to use this as a resource. And also really grateful to, I don't know if anyone can hear this 4-year-old talking in the background too, but
we totally can, and we accept the input of all constituents.
Okay.
In District 12.
But as Alex mentioned just before, it's been kind of exciting to see the possibilities come together for what a lot of different groups can do together over the summer in terms of youth programming and trying to team up for potentially, multi-organization something. It's a little too early to sort of reveal the planning, but we're working on it to try and keep people occupied in a way, knowing that things won't be back to normal for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Jerry Culligan.
Yes, thank you. This is addressed to Jennifer. I'm at the Rocky Dog Run, and as all the dog runs are closed. So I was wondering if first I could get notice whenever, hopefully, it reopens before it does. And secondly, can we get a chip delivery to our run, even though we are closed? And,
Good time to do maintenance.
oh, yeah. But, the run is closed, and I'm a little concerned about going into the run to actually do maintenance in the run. Is it some way to get some kind of a notice that we're allowed to do that without actually, getting somebody upset? And finally,
I will absolutely look into that for you, Jerry, because I know we've got a lot of people monitoring compliance, and I would hate for you to get penalized for wanting to do good. So let me see how we can structure it.
I would appreciate that. The final thing is, and I'm not even sure this is this committee, but someone asked me about mulching pickups, the buildings and people who have been doing that, and it's been shut down apparently. Can that be reopened?
Are you talking about the compost? That's
the compost.
Yeah, that's Department of Sanitation. I think they may have
suspended it. They suspended it as of May 4th. And the mayor, the plan is to resume it in 2021. There isn't a start date for resumption, but the plan is not to end it altogether, but to just postpone it because they had to seriously redeploy sanitation personnel. It's a real bummer.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you. Sarah, Sally.
Me?
Sally Fisher.
Okay, very important day in Parks history. Today is the 6th anniversary of Commissioner Silver's first day at work. So you still have a few hours to wish him a happy anniversary. But I think we need to give a big shout out to our Parks Commissioner and to the Parks staff because y'all have done a wonderful job during this whole thing. We, unfortunately, as Friends of Inwood Hill Park, had to cancel Earth Day and the following weekend, the River Sweep with Hudson Riverkeeper. That will be rescheduled in October. We are doing some work on physically distanced street tree care. The daffodils came up, now we're on to the next phase. And then with, in regard to the question about the compost, while Ring Garden, like other gardens, are closed to the public, we do have composting for our members. And we've been putting in a big effort to go through because our compost bins were full. We're now accepting compost from our members. So anyway, there is one spot for composting.
Fantastic. Thank you. So a very important cultural note, DJ Nice just started a new dance party on Instagram. So
gotta go.
Yeah, so gotta go. I do want to call attention to some of my Zoom backgrounds, not just to remind people that our parks continue to be beautiful, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful during the day. They're beautiful at night, and we are so lucky to have so many of them. I do want to say that, you know, we are the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee. Some agendas were a little more culture heavy. Other agendas were a little more parks heavy. Next month, I do, particularly since it is Art Stroll month, we have virtual events happening that started last month and that are going through this month and next month as well. But next month, I would like to start the meeting with a little bit more of a focus on arts and culture. And my apologies to Neria, and I hope that she's able to come back next month. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I have, except I did promise Nobles that I had one kind of sad Google background picture, and I'm looking for it.
Coogan's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't look, Steve.
Don't look,
Yeah.
Steve.
Don't look, Steve. Shame.
Coogan's.
I was wondering if there's something we can add to next month's agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not sure how this policy was created, but I was wondering about expanding the barbecue area in Inwood Hill Park.
Expanding?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will say that barbecuing is always a huge issue. And, you know, the short version is there are a lot of people who love barbecuing and want to see more of it and want to see increased capacity to do it in a way that's fun and that's safe. And I think that's really appropriate. And then there are a lot of people who kind of hate it because it does bring a lot of noise and a lot of garbage and a lot of, you know, some people are really great about cleaning up after themselves and some people not so much. And there's no, by some people and some people, I just mean people of every age, gender, ethnicity fall into both camps. There's no there's no like one kind of people does this and one kind of people does that. It's like everybody does everything. And I think you are absolutely right that that's a good public conversation to have. And I think it's probably a good idea to publicize in advance that that's something that we want to talk about, because I think public engagement over how do we have that in a way that's fun and that's safe and that doesn't make everybody crazy is a really appropriate conversation to have.
Thanks.
Doesn't that usually come up when there's a planned restructuring though of a park, like just not in general? I don't know if the section you're talking about, is there something planned for that area to change?
No, I guess I've just noticed, I mean, you know, the parks, there probably won't be barbecuing permitted this summer. I mean, maybe there will be, but I just have noticed in previous years that the barbecuing area in Inwood Hill Park is usually at capacity, and I just wondered if it would be possible to expand it.
Okay, so that's totally a conversation that we can and should have, and I am happy to add that to the agenda. Sally, if you can let me know, I know that the Washington Heights Inwood Food Council would prefer to have a presentation when it's in person, not when it's on Zoom. But I don't know if I don't know what we're gonna be doing in June. I have a funny feeling we're still gonna be Zooming in June.
Right,
So
we have a steering committee meeting on Thursday, and I can get back to you on Friday. I'm guessing that we will take this spot if it's available.
yes, it is. I would absolutely like to make it available to you for June, but it would be helpful to know that sooner rather than later. So definitely let me know. Does anybody else have other items, any other items?
I had
Yes.
an
Carol.
announcement.
Yes.
Well, one, good catch earlier, Francisco, saw that. Two, it may or may not be related, but wearing my hat at the Commission on Human Rights, I'll just say there's an expanded human rights law, a new protected class that basically says employers cannot discriminate against someone in the hiring process because they have smoked or ingested in some way marijuana. So that is a new thing on our website as of just this past Sunday. So take a look at that.
Is that prior marijuana use or does it cover current marijuana use? Just
I don't know how long it lasts in your system. So.
Sure.
They can still test existing employees, just not candidates.
Incoming. How about if so you can't do any more marijuana tests for employees
in the hiring process. Correct.
That's fantastic. That's great, man.
Does it include arrests too, or no?
Say that again.
Does it include arrests as well, or not?
Oh, well, the Fair Chance Act has been in place for about 4 years, so.
Okay.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks a lot, Daryl.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Wait, one.
I think Sally had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it out for the committee to think about between now and next month, given that, especially on the park side, that parks are closed through June 30th. There's going to be a lot going on this summer, and we don't know what the pandemic is doing to us. I wonder if we could consider holding at least a July meeting and possibly in August.
So I will say we can't require attendance.
Right.
But we can certainly look at having an optional meeting to come together to talk about things. Like on the one hand, it's a little hard to attend a meeting. I mean, the thing that's nice about Zoom is, as Veronica pointed out, we can do this from anywhere. So it actually makes it weirdly easier to have a summer meeting. But I think we should circle back and discuss that next month in June. So I would say I'm looking at people's faces and I'm not seeing anybody going, what, a July meeting? Hell no. So I'm thinking like probably yes. And we should maybe just take a look at our schedules and see what's going to be the most likely to work out for people. And just know that anybody who can't make it, it's a completely optional meeting and you don't get penalized in any way for not being able to attend. And we also would not be able to like pass anything like resolutions, but we certainly can do our networky discussion-y thing.
I'll point out at one point we had about 45 people in the room.
Yeah.
We never get that in person.
Have to sign off. Bye, guys.
See you later, Jennifer.
But
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Seconded.
Who seconded?
Nobles.
Oh, wait, I thought you made the motion.
I thought you were making the motion because
No,
the
I
motion was stopped.
requesting a motion. So you're moving and
I'm
Darryl
moving.
is seconding. We got
Cool.
multiple seconds.
Sweet.
Goodbye, everybody. I love you all. It's wonderful to see your faces. Steve, you got to wash your hands. I just saw you touch your nose.
See you later, guys.
Love you
Bye.
all. Bye.
Bye.